Hello, everybody. Rick Manning, President Americans for Limited Government here. Man, last thing I thought I'd end up talking about today was Chinese spy satellite balloons over the United States. But here we go. It's getting spicy. The for those who haven't seen the pictures, I'm sure you have. But here's what the spy satellite looks like. I'll scroll down a little bit so you can see it. It has solar arrays on it, so it has the capacity to collect solar energy to run this satellite. And the Chinese initially attempted to explain this as being nothing more than like a weather balloon, um, you know, but nobody believes that. And apparently, we have now a second. NORAD is tracking a report that NORAD is tracking a second Chinese spy balloon in Canadian airspace, um, and it's hovering above a Air Force base at Cold Lake, RCAF. That's the Royal Canadian Air Force base at Cold Lake, Alberta, which is one of the key components of our air defense systems, because most of the anticipation of an ICBM strike is essentially uh, is part of the. We've got NORAD up in Alaska, and then we've got tracking stations throughout. And so so this is a second spy balloon that is hovering above this important Canadian Air Force base. Um, the Pentagon, weighed in and with a briefing. I just want you to hear this one part.
General, you said the balloon is maneuverable. Does that mean that it's not drifting?
So the balloon is maneuverable. Clearly, it's violated U.S. airspace, and again, we've communicated that fact to the PRC.
Uh, if possible, can you tell us if the balloon, when it entered the U.S. airspace, has it changed its course in any way?
The balloon has changed its course, which is again why we're monitoring it. But that's about as specific as I can get.
Okay, there you go. That's the Pentagon confirming that the balloon is uh, not just drifting along based on weather patterns, which a lot of people think and have presumed, which a rogue balloon that got away would do. Instead, it is actually changing course, and and as a result, it's under control by the Chinese, utilizing a system to be able to keep radio control halfway around the world, which is an interesting capacity. Most likely facilitated by their recently gained satellite system that they've been putting up in the air for the last 5-10 years. So this is so what we have is a maneuverable balloon that was sent up by the Chinese to spy on America. It was sent up with knowing full well that they were supposed to be a meeting between Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and his Chinese counterparts in China today, starting today, to try to build relations, or whatever they say out of the State Department terms. And the Chinese had a balloon that was destined to be over the United States at the time they scheduled this meeting. You can't look at that as being anything but provocative and basically giving the United States the finger. And the Wall Street Journal and others report that that Blinken trip to China was postponed based on this spy balloon. So this Pentagon, basically the Biden administration is saying, well, there's really no reason to meet with you when you engage in this kind of aggressive, provocative attack. Representative Michelle Steele, who's from Orange County, California, tweeted. She's part of the China caucus that's been set up to try to deal with the growing threat out of the Chinese Communist Party. And she's pointed out that it's growing threat to national security and sovereignty. Biden administration must stand up, show the strength of the U.S. now. Well, guess what? We're not shooting it down. The general they've made a decision to let this thing meander across the country. It is supposedly over Missouri right now, according to reports from citizens who say they've seen it spotted over northwest Missouri. The Air Force had confirmed that it was over the central part of the country. That would jibe with a Missouri sighting. Let's see what else we got. So that's, let's just talk about what this means now. This is just, it's infuriating. The United States of America has just announced to the world, and China has announced to the world, has basically said to the world, we control U.S. airspace. China controls U.S. airspace because we weren't willing to defend our airspace. A decision was made at the White House not to defend our airspace. We knew that this balloon was coming at us because NORAD would track it. So, and they're tracking stations up in Nome, Alaska. It's in Alaska, I think Nome. And so NORAD would have been tracking it. We saw, they're really good. They track Santa Claus every Christmas Eve. So, they're tracking this little slow moving balloon, right? But this balloon launches out of China, goes across, goes just south of South Korea. It then goes along the coastline, the western coastline or eastern coastline of Japan, all along the length of Japan. And then it goes up, and this is the weather pattern. This is how the currents flow. But then it goes up to Alaska, goes over our NORAD headquarters in Alaska. Then it cruises down the coastline of Canada on the inside of the coast. It's basically along the ridge that the mountain range is that separates. That's kind of like the Sierra Nevadas in California. And so it cruises along that down south, cuts east, goes over Montana, over nuclear silos in Montana, and now is heading across the country, halfway across the country now. So the fact that this administration chose not to shoot down this balloon, chose to say, nope, we're not going to do anything about it. We're going to allow China to conduct this. We're going to try to take preventive measures to make sure that it doesn't really collect any interesting data. But the data they collect is simple. It's how do we react? That's the data they collect, is how did we react to a slow moving threat? How long did it take? How long did it take for us to have the communications from point A to point B to make a decision on what to do? Because in a nuclear attack, you don't get much time. And so they were testing, clearly what these guys are testing is what our response times are. How long did it take to get planes in the air? How long did it take to actually do a military response to check out this situation? And that's something which we don't know what the military response time was, but China does. The Pentagon has admitted they put planes in the air to put an eyeball on the situation. China knows how long it took. How long did the command and control structure in the United States take to make that decision? When you're considering doing an attack on, it could be the United States or Taiwan or anywhere else, you really want to know how long it takes for the United States to react, because that gives you how much time you have before the U.S. is able to intervene. And it gives you how much, and based on positioning of ships in the Pacific and our various Air Force capacity, where our equipment is, so they know how long it takes to get that equipment into the theater. So this, at best case, this spy balloon, what it got was knowledge of how fast we can react, and that's invaluable information. The fact that we didn't shoot it down while it was before it ever got to Alaska tells them something too. It tells them that we are very reticent to actually take actions to stop the Chinese from engaging in aggressive, provocative behavior. If we shot the balloon down over the Pacific Ocean, and that part of the ocean up by from Japan to Alaska isn't that far, but you've got the Northern Pacific there, and it's over water space, so consequently, you don't have the problem of it a debris hitting anybody like they said it in Montana, oddly enough. But they found out we wouldn't do that. So all in all, this is a bad deal. This is horrific. The Chinese can now say, and once their little mission across the country is complete, if they do nothing else, and they are, by the way, going also, apparently the pathway is heading over 3 different nuclear places where we do nuclear research. Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Savannah River in South Carolina, and a spot in Missouri. And so the path is going right over places where we do nuclear research. And so they have a distinctive path. They've got somebody in China controlling this thing, and they're collecting data. One would hope that the ability for them to collect data would be inhibited, but you'd also think that if you can inhibit the ability for them to collect data and recover that data via communications, that the ability for them to control the satellite from afar would have been abridged also by stopping the communications from outside of that outside the satellite. Apparently, that hasn't happened because they're still maneuvering the thing around. So it's a little, I'm sorry, but this is just really, really bad news. I'm going to take some comments here because my wife, when I was talking to her about this, she's the one who told me about it last night. I thought it was a cartoon. I thought it wasn't, that there was no way that this was happening. And she assured me it was. I read a little bit, and truthfully, as I got to think about this more and more today, 2 radio interviews this morning. First question, what about the balloon? The more I thought about it, the more mad I got. What the heck are we spending for defense spending? We won't defend our southern border. We won't defend our airspace against an invasion by communist China. I mean, what the heck are we spending $730 billion in 2022 for? If we won't use that, we won't actually use our defense to actually protect our borders. It's insane. Another piece of information on this is we have now today, Defense Secretary Austin is in the Philippines, and the Philippines, after the Spanish-American War in 1898, the United States became a territory of the United States. After Japan drove us out of the Philippines, and then we drove them out of the Philippines during World War II. Philippines became an independent nation shortly thereafter. But Philippines has been a very important base for America. A few years ago, about 10 years ago, that relationship ended. We no longer had a major base at Subic Bay. We no longer had a major military, Army facility. Today, they've announced that there's going to be 4 additional spots for the United States for us to be able to work in coordination with the Philippines and co-host, co-house military equipment and the like. I was reading very closely. It did not look like Subic Bay was being reopened, which would be ideal. But it does look as though we're attempting to make some moves to try to make it so the Chinese dominance in the Southern Pacific, which they've been trying to establish, can be countered by U.S. naval power and U.S. military power. Additionally, an announcement was made that we are opening up a new base on Guam, which is a U.S. territory, and Guam is relatively, both Philippines and Guam are relatively close to Taiwan, and that base is going to house 5,000 Marines. It's the first new Marine base that's being opened in 70 years. And it is designed specifically to try to counter the China threat in the Pacific. So that's what's happening around the world beyond the spy satellite. There are a lot of chess pieces being moved, but the question, what we're really looking at is those of us who've been paying attention. China's been saying they want to destroy Taiwan and they don't really care if there's a single thing left on the island as long as they control the dead rock. They've been saying that for a long time. And the fact that we had, and they've made it clear that they were an enemy of the United States for a long time. And yet America has sat there and silently kind of said, oh, well, we got to keep trading with them. It's crazy to do so. Just last week, Senator Tom Cotton, Rick Scott, and others, I guess John Barrasso was on, I can't remember the fourth guy, were on legislation to end the permanent normalized trade relations status with China. In 1998, the Clinton administration pushed through legislation through Congress that gave China most favored nation status, meaning they got the lowest rate on the card for trade. It made it so, and they were approving that on an annual basis, with Congress holding China accountable. But the business community wanted it on a permanent basis so they could invest in China and grow in China. And they saw 1 billion potential customers and they wanted access to them. So in 1998, the permanent normalized trade relations status was given to China. And since then, they have seen exponential growth of their economy. Their spying and the like have contributed to that, as they've stolen intellectual property, they've stolen the capacity, the way to build things. They have, in fact, become as we all know, a vast majority of their manufacturing sector has been built using U.S. technology. Their military has been built largely using U.S. technology that was stolen out of our research labs like Alamo. And so we have so they've been doing this for a long time. It's time for Congress to say, we no longer are going to allow China to fund their expansion and their war on the United States, because this has been a Cold War they've been conducting while we've been sitting silent saying, gee, maybe they'll reform. We sure hope they'll reform. Oh, because we're trading with them, they should really like us now. They can't afford to destroy us because, we're trading partners and we have mutual interests. China doesn't care about those economic interests. They care about power. They care about dominance. And when you care about power and dominance and not the economic interests go by the wayside because they figure they can always rebuild it. What's more, they don't care about their own population. Their own population for the Chinese government, the worst situation for them is a population that has hope. And economic prosperity brings hope and brings an expectation of political freedom. The Chinese government doesn't want that expectation. They don't want their population to have hope. They want their population to be slaves. That's what they want. And so the entire rationale, the Western thinking rationale that they were going to suddenly transform into a Western-like society failed miserably. And it's time to end the experiment. It's time to close down the permanent normalized trade relations with China and to stop the stupidity of having our resources, our money be spent in China to enrich their government, to buy equipment that is designed to kill us. And so Senator Tom Cotton is to be commended. He was the lead sponsor on that. Actually, they sent me a nice note because I suggested that to him about 3 years ago, and they introduced it a couple of years. They reintroduced it to last week. So one thing we could do out there is encourage your senators to get on the bill to end PNTR, permanent normalized trade relations with China. That's something that we could do right now. Okay, so let's look at some of the questions. Jonathan Johnson, you mean to tell me our defense systems caught no wind of this? Our defense systems caught wind of this. The Pentagon said they had been tracking it. But the fact of the matter is, the failure was we didn't do anything about it. And we tried to make it so, they can't detect exactly where our silos are when they're going over our nuclear, our ICBM field. So, okay. And they probably figured that they could get the same information from a spy satellite that was an extra 60,000 feet above the Earth than they could from this one that's 60,000 feet up right now in the atmosphere. And there's a lot of speculation that what China was really doing is they were telling the world, they were showing the world that the United States was so feckless that we would allow them to run a satellite in plain sight over their country, over our country, and not shoot it down. That we have absolutely no intention of defending our own borders. And if we're too weak to defend our own borders, how can a Taiwan or anybody else expect us to be defending theirs and participating in their defense? So this is about weakening resolve of our allies in the Pacific Rim. And this is exactly what they're trying to do with this very obvious thumb in the eye of America, providing Joe Biden another black eye, showing that he is, in fact, perhaps, I think he's teetering on the worst president in history of the United States. And the fact of the matter is, China has absolutely no problem saying to Joe, you just have to take it. And y'all can, figure out your own reasons why he does that. Let's see here. Here's the here's one of our, what I'd hope you would do. This is the link I've got up here that we're trying to get people to, if you're not already on the mailing list, get on the mailing list so we can communicate with you and you don't have to just catch these things as they come along. What's being done about it, Julie? What's being done about it? Well, the Air Force says nothing. Okay, that's what the Brigadier General in the briefing said. Nope, we're not doing anything. We're observing it, and we're going to make certain they can't see much. Okay, that's what we're doing. We're doing nothing. That decision was made at the White House level. They scrambled jets to take it down. The decision was not to take it down. That was directly out of the White House. So the decision is we're not going to do anything about it. We canceled the Blinken meeting, meeting with Secretary of State, to send a strong diplomatic message. To steal a note from a news network, I can only report, you can decide. Dennis, I agree with you. Chandra, you're right. And the only thing I could come up with as to why they wouldn't shoot it down is if they are afraid that it might have some, China has delivered a bioweapon here in the past 3 years to America, killing over 1 million, almost 2 million Americans with it, and shutting down our economy and destroying a lot of our character. And so I think it's reasonable to wonder what's on the inside of the balloon, and if it isn't a pathogen that would be equally destructive. So, and the fact that the people in the Pentagon don't know what's inside the balloon makes it so they might be a little bit reticent to shoot down the balloon. Okay, that's the only thing I can come up with. I'm speculating. I don't know. There you go, Mary Bradley. You just asked the question that I just talked about. Normally what we do is we kind of monitor these things, and I do 5 or 6, but I'm going to do a bunch of them. Stephen, yes, it's only 60,000 feet up, and the fact is we probably have. Okay, I have been told by people who should know that we have the capacity to actually go up and capture the balloon and bring it down to be inspected. That is what I've been told. At the very least, if they took the solar arrays off of it, the balloon would run out of capacity to steer, because it would no longer have the batteries would no longer being charged, and that would cause it to. So that would cause it to at least not be under control of the Chinese government. They could have taken the solar arrays out very, very early. So Stephen, yeah, it can be the 60,000, since it's only 60,000 feet up. We have planes that go, just commercial aircraft go at 40 to 50,000 feet all the time. And the military has far more upper atmosphere capability than we know about. Okay. Just looking through some of the things here. Yeah, well, Gary, they do have a number of spy satellites, just as we do. They are putting a base on the far side of the moon, which is designed to create uh, a permanence on the moon. It's actually and to be able to do things, the reason they're doing it on the far side of the moon is so we can't see it. And so as we start heading back to the moon with the Artemis rocket system and the like, it's one of the reasons that's been we're having to kick that into gear, because we have to know what they're doing on the far side of the moon. If their intent was benign, they would be doing where it could be watched, and their intent is not benign. So, and the fact is the Chinese have developed the capacity to, using laser printing technology, to actually build things very rapidly without humans. And so that's by using robotics, a combination of robotics, artificial intelligence, and laser printing. They have the capacity to build buildings on the moon. They have the capacity to basically put the materials up to be able to build virtually anything they want up there. And we don't know what they're doing. And that's the big challenge is we can't hide what our military is doing. They've hidden their capacity. And so now, and this has been going on for about 2 years. And it's actually why President Trump, maybe 3-4 years, but it's why President Trump started the Space Force, to be able to deal with this kind of problem, because the Air Force was concerned about terrestrial air, even though that's where it was essentially kept. But the Air Force was concerned about 80,000 feet down, 80,000 feet up in the air down. President Trump rightly decided we need a Space Force to specifically deal with threats from killer satellite technology, which the Chinese have implemented to try to knock out our eyes in the sky. And so there's a lot of different areas where space warfare is something which controlling the space around our Earth may turn out to be as important in future warfare as controlling the skies above a battlefield are today, because so much of our technology is dependent upon the information fed to it through our satellite systems. And if those satellite systems are knocked out, effectively, much of our technology is blind at that point. And when you have a system that's designed, and a coordinated attack systems that are designed to be able to look at an entire battlefield space and know what's going on in the entire battlefield space, to be able to integrate what you're doing, if you lose your eye in the sky because there's been a satellite weapon killing weapon against your satellite system that is giving you the bird's eye view, you're blind. And the Chinese know that. If I know that, the Chinese know that. So that's so Space Force is designed to deal with that. It's going to get, we're going to end up in a Buck Rogers world, but that Buck Rogers world is going to be one where, at least in the next 50 years, it's going to be Buck Rogers against domestic, world foreign powers on this Earth. They're trying to dominate the atmosphere around us in a way that allows them to have operational control of any battlefield. So that's the reality. That's what's going on. And it's and the fact that we failed the basic test of having a slow moving balloon, come into our space and letting it do so is kind of insane. I'm going to tell you an analogy that I've used on the air today. There's a video out where you have a guy saying, a martial artist guy saying, "Okay, so I'm going to hit you. I'm going to slap you. Stop me." And he goes to slap him in the martial arts classroom and blocks his slap. And he tries to slap him again. And the martial artist blocks it again. And so the guy goes, "Very good. You've done really well. And you've done really, really well." He reaches his hand out really slowly and goes, boom. And the other guy had never even noticed that the slow moving hand was the one that hit him. That didn't hit him very hard, but it hit him. And so rather than send a fast moving object through our airspace, similar to the Blackbird that we have that flies really high and does surveillance above countries all over the world. I guess it's SR-71 Blackbird. The Chinese with the slow-moving balloon are sitting there saying, "You see, if we'd sent a fast-moving plane, you would have shot it down. But because we sent a low technology balloon with a lot of technology inside of it, you let it go." And there's a lesson to be learned there about what to pay attention to. Let's see here. Get a lot on shooting it down, and once again, there's the only thing that I can see is, the Pentagon has expressed concern that shooting it down would have a negative, could have ramifications for people on the ground. We now know it's, at least it's being reported that it's now traversing Missouri or somewhere in that area. And the reality is, if we don't, I think the idea was they should have shot it down was over the Pacific Ocean. Okay. Shooting it down while it's over our territory, if it has a pathogen in it, if it has nuclear fallout, nuclear kind of little nuclear weapons in it, we don't know. You shoot it down, and you have and you're dealing with an unknown. And if you shoot it down over the water, at the very least, you're mitigating any fallout directly from the balloon that's hitting the surface, hitting the water. So that's one of the things that you look at and you say you have to make a guess on. And unfortunately, our slow decision-making White House, paralyzed in fear over everything, was unable to make a decision to shoot it down when it was safest to shoot down. And that was when it was north of Japan and south of Alaska. Let's see. Yeah, Patricia, you're 100% right. It is going across the country, and it's hitting not just bases, but it's hitting nuclear research facilities, and it's getting a real good picture of a lot of things that we probably prefer they not see. But from a practical perspective, from a national defense perspective, you have to assume with over 200 satellites in the air, that China has the same camera technology, at least as good as we have in our iPhones, which we buy from China. So they have really good camera technology that they're utilizing from their spy satellites, and you have to assume they have this. At least they have somewhat near the same capacity in their satellites to take pictures of what's going on in the ground. And you have to assume they've got a lot of satellites on geosynchronous orbit over the United States, designated for certain areas where we have military activity, nuclear activity and the like. And so they've been observing those things for a while. And this balloon is probably not generating a lot more information, except for information on how we respond, how long it takes to put a plane in the air. So that would be my concern. Brad Tidwell, old friend Brad Tidwell, how you doing, Brad? Brad's one of the great guys, by the way. He worked with ALG a long time ago, and then he moved away, and he's got kids, and he's like an adult now. But he's a really great guy. Japanese tried doing this in World War II, where they tried to spread bubonic plague to America. Yeah, that's so there's really nothing new under the sun here. And so the question becomes, since that balloon is under control, if they have what we don't know is if the balloon, can self-destruct and actually pour poison into our skies. And so as long as the Chinese are controlling the balloon, you have to assume that they have control over its functions and that they planned various things that they could do with that balloon, since they're maintaining operational control. Let's see. Yeah, well, let's just be clear. The Pentagon does not believe it's a weather balloon. The Pentagon believes it is a spy satellite, and they're treating it like that. But I would encourage you to the video I played at the beginning, this one, with the spokesperson for our good friends at the United States Air Force. I would encourage you to watch this, because this guy, basically, I'm not going to tell you anything. We didn't do anything. We're just, if ever you wanted to send a message that America was feckless, you'd have this gentleman right here deliver that message, because he was pretty non-threatening. Let's put it that way. So I would encourage you. I found this on YouTube. Just go to Pentagon briefing on Chinese spy balloon, and on YouTube, and you can watch the whole thing. It's about 33 minutes. A lot of the news reports you're seeing is off of this press conference that happened about an hour and 15 minutes ago, and it would be maybe 2 hours ago. But just watching it and watching kind of how he answers questions, and it just kind of makes you, it's not real reassuring. I think we're just pretty much going through the same kind of questions again. I think it's really concerning that there's been a second spy balloon sighted over Canada. This is clearly intended as at best a test of our capacities, and we failed. It's very simple. We failed, and the world is a less safe place today because we failed this test, this challenge. And we should have shot it down. We should have shot it down when it was north of Japan and south of Alaska. When it was, could have shot it down in our territorial waters. And in that regard, and then we would have invaded our space. We shot it down immediately. That would have sent a much better message than let's let the thing float across America and be a laughing stock for the world. Because China is going to tell the world, America, look at this picture. America had a balloon, a slow-moving balloon floating across their country, and they were afraid to shoot it down because they're afraid of the great Chinese empire. That's what China's telling people right now. So, it's the decisions had to be made in the White House. The White House failed, and it's sad but true. Folks, we plan to be back with you on Monday. Hopefully there are not 10 more balloons floating across the country between then and now, along with a lot of other stuff. But, I'm generally a pretty voice of reason on this kind of stuff, to not overreact. The fact of the matter is, China's testing the waters to see what war with the United States would be like. We failed, and the world is a more dangerous place today. Hopefully that does not lead to the kind of catastrophe that it could. With that, I'm going to sign off and wish you all a good weekend. And if we see anything else coming up on this in the weekend that we can share with you, we will do so. Feel free to share this. I think it's important information. I try to consolidate it in the first 10 minutes. So feel free, please share this so others know what's going on, because ultimately the way these videos get a lot of traffic and get a lot of people eyeballs on them is for other people to share them on all the social media outlets. And that way, your friends and those who follow you on various social media outlets and on your email get an opportunity to find out what's going on. And like I say, I try to consolidate the information we had in the first 10 minutes. So it's a pretty easy watch to get that in the first 10. And then the rest of us pretty much talk about implications. With that, I will shut down now. And thank you very much for watching. And, God is good, and we will prevail.